Okay, it says it's live.
Okay, I see us on the YouTube page.
Oh, cool.
Perfect. All right, and we must be live. All right. Okay, awesome. So, hey, I'm seeing people are joining. We have about 5 viewers right now, which is awesome. If you guys don't know me, and if you come from Sarah, or Lindsay's channels, my name is Maggie, and I have a booktube channel called Magazine. And I am talking with these lovely authors today about just their journey with publishing and writing. And so, if you guys want to go ahead and introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your writing, that would be awesome.
Who wants to go first?
You just go ahead, Sara Ella.
Oh, okay, I'll go first. So I'm Sara Ella, and my channel is Sara Ella, and my debut young adult urban fantasy romance, Unblemished, releases on October 11th of this year. It is the first in a 3-book series. I have a contract with Thomas Nelson HarperCollins. And other than that, my favorite show is Once Upon a Time, and I used to work for Disney, so there you go.
Very nice.
Cool. I'll go ahead and go next. I'm Sara Crawford, and my YouTube channel is Sara Crawford. It's very original. Yeah, I am also a young adult author. I have an agent, but I have not gotten a book deal yet, so I'm still kind of in that process. But I'm also a playwright, so that's kind of a different thing, I guess. Yeah, and I like to talk about music a lot on my YouTube channel.
Okay, I guess I'll go next. I'm Lindsay Detwiler. I write women's fiction and contemporary romance. My debut novel, Voice of Innocence, just released last February. And then in December, I released my second novel, Without You. It's a new adult contemporary romance. And I'm getting ready to release my third novel called Then Comes Love, which is in the women's fiction genre. And it comes out March 25th of this year. I'm also an English teacher by day, so that's kind of my day job in addition to writing. And I'm obsessed with cats and my mastiff named Henry, who is in every single book that I write.
Love it. And I've read 2 of Lindsay's books, and I'm really excited for the third one. So
Thank you.
I we're still waiting on Tegan Wren, who is the author of Inconceivable, who is caught up in a meeting right now, but she'll be joining us later. And Inconceivable is her debut novel that came out, I believe, in November of last year. Um, but she will join us later, and you'll get to meet her then. I'm just going to kind of jump in to some questions that I have for you all, and it doesn't matter what order you go in to answer it. If you feel like you have a passionate answer, you can go ahead out of order or whatever. So, how many of you are agented? I know Sarah Crawford, you just said you were agented, and what was that process like finding an agent?
Um, well, for me, I just found my agent, through the slush pile, querying, and I mean, I didn't meet her at like a conference or anything. I know a lot of writers do that. But yeah, I literally queried like every agent in America who probably represents young adult literature, and I got I got like a dozen or so requests for the full manuscript. And then, yeah, my agent and we just kind of like connected right away. So yeah, and she's really been supportive throughout the whole process.
Awesome, awesome.
I am agented also, and I did go about it by meeting him at a conference, which I recommend to anybody if you can go to a writing conference. It's such a great experience. Whether you find an agent there or not, it's just good to practice pitching your story. So I met him, and he, along with a few other agents, had requested my full manuscript, and that was just kind of the beginning of the waiting game. I queried for about 3 months before I heard back from anybody, and one of the agents I had met at the conference had offered me a contract. We had talked a little bit over email, and he just, I had gotten 2 offers, and I was trying to decide between him and another agent, and he just had all the right answers to all of my questions. I had a list of everything that I wanted in an agent and a list of questions that I wanted to ask potential agents who were interested in my story, and he had all the right answers, and so that's just kind of how that went, and he's awesome.
How long did it take after you were agented to be picked up by HarperCollins, which is a huge deal, by the way? Congratulations again.
Oh, well, thank you. HarperCollins just kind of they have all of these different branches, so they just have all of these different, sometimes you won't even know that something is HarperCollins, and then you'll look it up and like, oh, they own that too, because they own so much. So thank you so much. That's very sweet. It took me 6 months. He had submitted to everybody, Harper Teen, and just everybody, and it ended up being picked up by Thomas Nelson, who HarperCollins only purchased, I think, in 2011 they purchased Thomas Nelson, so that's not typical either. I was very surprised that it took so little time, and I think it just depends on when stuff gets submitted and who's looking at it at the time and what they're looking for, because it's always changing what publishers are looking for.
Definitely. And Lindsay, how about you? Are you agented, or did you submit on your own?
I am not agented, so I actually just submitted straight to the publisher. Really, when I got started, I guess I just kind of didn't realize, you could go to an agent. I just kind of went straight to the publisher, not really knowing where things would go with Voice of Innocence. And then once I did that, I really just liked working with the publishers on my own. So I've kind of just stuck with that route now for my second and third novels, and it's been going really well for me. So that's kind of where I'm at with that process. So.
Awesome. And you're with different publishers for each book, or are you with
I
the same
am
one?
actually. So my first book is actually with Melange Publishing. My second book is with Limitless Publishing, and then my third publisher is Hot Tree Publishing. So.
Of just working with the publisher yourself versus having an agent in between, has it worked out well for you?
For me, I think it has. Certainly it was a learning curve at the beginning because without an agent, you are kind of on your own to kind of figure out things. But I've been really blessed to come across some really nice authors, some fellow authors to kind of help me figure things out. And I've been lucky. All 3 of my publishers have been really, really nice about staying in contact with me and really helping me navigate the waters. So I think that it depends on the publishing house you go with. Like I said, I've been really blessed. My publishing houses have had really, really nice, helpful people who have been very patient with me, even when I was figuring everything out in the beginning. So that's been helpful.
Definitely. That was a question for Tegan, but when she gets here, I'll ask that. Well, I know it's important now to have an online presence as an author, and I know both of our Sarahs you all 3 are YouTubers. Tegan's the only one that doesn't YouTube. And so how important is it to form those online communities while you're publishing books or even before your books become published?
I'll go ahead and jump in. I started blogging probably about 2 years before my book was finished, and just because I was told you have to grow your platform, and I think it is important more than the numbers is forming connections with people, and that's where BookTube, YouTube really kind of changed the game for me, is because I had been blogging, I'd been trying to get followers on Twitter, trying to get followers on Facebook. But I wasn't really, I mean, I had lots of connections with authors, but authors aren't really who, I mean, you need the author connections, but you want to reach readers. And that's really where BookTube came in for me, and I've really found that I've connected with people in the community there, and it's become an enjoyable thing. And so when anybody asks me, oh, hey, do I need to get on all these different social media outlets, I say, pick one or two that you really, really love, and then try to grow that. Don't just get on everything trying to get all of these numbers all over the place. Stick with something you love and then be consistent with it, and that's really what YouTube has been for me.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. Because well, I mean, I'm a musician, so I've kind of I spent a lot of time building up my online presence from a musician aspect. So I was already kind of doing that, but then, I was trying to promote my writing, I guess, as well. So yeah, the YouTube thing, I kind of, just used to use it for my music and putting up songs every now and then I discovered BookTube, and I thought it was really cool that there was this whole community of people just talking about books. And like Sara Ella said, I think it's more important to become a part of an online community as opposed to just having an online presence and saying, like, buy my book every 5 seconds or whatever. Like, people don't really want to read that kind of. I mean, it's good to like have your links and have everything where people can find it, but I do notice some artists or writers just doing like the self-promotional tweets like all the time, and people want to follow you and hear what you have to say about other kinds of things as well, like books or music,
Definitely. No, I totally agree with that.
I think too, it's really important to start as early as possible. For me, that was the biggest mistake I made. Again, when I started this kind of journey, I didn't expect to even go anywhere with it. I wasn't even sure if Voice of Innocence would ever be published. So when I did sign that first contract, I did not have a really great online presence going. I had a basic Facebook page and that was it. So I was really kind of trying to build up that author platform while I was in the process of promoting my first book, and that was probably the biggest mistake I've made. I think as time has gone on, I've realized that. I think the sooner you start, even way before you finish that first book, I think the sooner the better, because like you said, it really gives you the chance to build those genuine connections, and you're not just panicking and trying to tell everyone about your book all at once. So I think that is so important.
Definitely. And Sara Crawford, you have talked a lot about music. Do any of you have like certain artists or playlists that you listen to while you're writing? This is like one of my favorite questions to ask authors.
For me, I literally make a playlist for like every situation almost. I mean, I am obsessive about making playlists, and it really depends on what I'm writing. So I'll pretty much make a different playlist for every project that I'm working on, sometimes even for every character or, different scenes. But with my latest novel that I'm trying to get published right now, it's a young adult urban fantasy, and some artists that I really love listening to when I'm working on that has been Muse and M83 and Jeff Buckley.
I'm the exact same way as Sara Crawford. Spotify is like the best invention ever in the world of everything, because you can create your own playlist for free. And so I do have what I call soundtrack for my novels, and I have to have everything in order, and I have a separate document that has every song written down and exactly what chapter it comes in and what scene it comes in. And I got that idea from Kara Cass because she has a newer novella collection that came out. With the first novella collection she came out with, she had her playlist written down, and with each song It was what scene goes with that song, and I absolutely loved that. I loved knowing the songs that went with scenes in one of my favorite books, and so that's something I just kind of have to have for my own knowledge, because music is a huge inspiration to me, and thank goodness for YouTube, because whenever I need inspiration I can just go on there and just look up the score to Once Upon a Time or other movies like that, and those are great to write to if you can't necessarily listen to words while you're writing, because sometimes words can be distracting. I find that movie scores really help get the juices flowing. Oh, and sorry, you asked what artists we like to listen to. I'm not as deep as Sara Crawford with her awesome indie music, but so I'm a little bit more cheesy. I love Christina Perri and One Direction and The Fray. I'll stop embarrassing myself right there.
Hey,
I
I
love
like
Christina
Christina Perri as well. So.
Okay, awesome.
Okay, I really don't listen to music when I write. I kind of like it quiet. If I do listen to music, it's got to be like Pandora classical for studying, because I find it distracting. But my favorite artist who kind of inspires me would have to be Ed Sheeran. I'm obsessed with his songs, especially Photograph. Love it. So if I were inspired by any song, it would be definitely Ed Sheeran.
Awesome. I just am always curious because it's definitely like a stark contrast between people who can listen to music while they write and cannot at all, and so I have to ask.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, like, instrumental stuff is really good. For me, if there are words, it has to be something that I know so well that it's not going to distract me, you know, because I'm not going to be listening to what the words are because I know them so well, I guess.
Hmm, definitely. Did any of you enter in like Twitter pitch competitions at all? Because I know Tegan signed with her publisher from a Twitter pitch competition, so that was kind of a question that I had for her, but I didn't know if anyone else entered in any.
I have participated in them in the past, but that's actually not how I found any of my publishers. But I think they're really great because it gives you a chance to kind of test the waters with your ideas, and it also gives you a lot of practice as far as pitching, because you really do have to get really, really good at pitching your work. So I think it is awesome practice, and you can kind of see what kind of feedback you get. And I know some authors too who like to do it just to see what agents and publishers are looking for, because sometimes you can get an idea from that. So I think that they're a really, really good way to build that confidence, especially if you're a new author. But I have used them in the past, but like I said, that's not how I found my publisher, but I think they're great.
Yeah, I think they're great too. I have participated in them in the past, and you know, I've had some interest from smaller indie publishers that I, you know, ultimately didn't end up going with. But yeah, I think Twitter is great for writers, especially the manuscript wish list. So it's like hashtag MSWL, and agents and editors will actually use that hashtag to like post what kinds of stories they're looking for. So that's a really good resource as well.
I actually, I agree with Lindsay and Sarah. They're so great, and especially with Twitter, and you only have that character limit, it really teaches you how to pitch like tight and concise in as short a space as you possibly can. I actually didn't hear about any of those kinds of contests or anything until after I was agented. I did enter one like blog contest on Miss Snark's First Victim. She does like a pitch war type contest on her blog every year. I entered that, but I've never done the pitch wars on Twitter or anything. But I do think they're great.
Awesome. Lindsay, you mentioned that you didn't find your publishers through any Twitter pitch competitions. How did you find your publishers and go about like reaching out to them?
Really, it was just a really good Google search. That's how I came across them. I did a lot of research, so once I find a publisher I might be interested in, I always look to see, what their covers look like first, because I think that's really important in this industry. So I always look at that. I try to find some authors who have worked with the publishers to see what their responses are, see kind of what, if, how things went with them in the process, check those kind of things out, and then it's just a matter of kind of following their procedures for sending your work into them. So I think it's just about really doing your research, making sure you know kind of what the company's about and what their goal is. So I think you have to be really careful with that.
Definitely, definitely. Now, another big thing that I wanted to cover tonight was editing and the editing process. And I'm sure, Sara Ella, have you had to go through like 2 rounds of editing with your agent and then now with the publishers? And what has that been like? And anyone can answer this, how their editing process goes.
Yeah, my agent didn't do any editing for this first book, Unblemished, because I actually hired a freelance editor, because I'm a perfectionist and I really wanted to be submitting something clean, and I did not trust myself to edit it myself, and I know some people just are amazing at that, and they submit and they edit it themselves and they get awesome contracts and agents. I just felt that I needed that little extra help, and so I did go through a freelance editor, so my agent didn't have any edits for me. But then with my publisher, the way that it went was, once I got my contract, I had 3 months in which to turn in my manuscript. Now that manuscript was already finished, but I went over it twice again just to make sure, and then I turned it in, and then it took my editor about a month and a half to get me her editorial letter, which is basically everything that, big picture stuff, the plot, the characters, even down to these character names sound way too similar. Things like that. They're not like what you would think of like line edits with you need a comma here. It's just big picture stuff, and that took me about 3 months to get through all of those revisions, and then it took my editor about probably 3 weeks to just go over those again and give me her last few notes, and right now I am just going over her last few notes on those revisions before my manuscript goes to my line editor on the 20th, and so then it will go through line edits, and then there's like the design edit, it's just and then proofreading. So I've got a few more rounds, but the major revisions are done. Everything else is mostly just technical.
Lindsay, what was the process like for you?
I would say very similar. It's a lot of back and forth, rereading your work a lot of times. For me, I was really intimidated at first. I was really nervous about editing, but I've come to really realize it really does make you a better writer. Like this third time around, I feel like I'm learning so much, and from each editor I've worked with, I've learned different little tips and tricks and techniques. So I feel like it really does help you kind of strengthen your writing. So I do think ultimately it's a good thing. It's just, it is a lot of work. It can be really stressful because you are under deadline and you are trying to really make it the best you can absolutely make it. So it is a lot of pressure. I think there's sometimes some second guessing of yourself and, are you making the right decisions? But ultimately, I've worked with really, really great editors who have really helped guide me and help me make good decisions, I think. So it is a big process. It's very, very time consuming, but I think in the end it's worth it.
Sara Crawford, did you go through edits with your agent at all, or do you use like any critique partners or beta readers, anything like that?
I do have critique partners and beta readers, and they've helped me a lot. My novel's gone through several rounds of revisions. My agent didn't give me that many notes, but she has kind of directed me through, I guess, revisions that I've already been sort of working on. But then I also have experience on the other side of it because I do a lot of freelance editing for other authors, like mostly self-published authors or really, really indie kind of publisher authors, but so that's been really cool to kind of experience from the other side and um, help people sort of carve out the story that they are trying to tell. Um, so yeah, that's been cool.
Very cool. What's the most common thing that you see as a freelance editor that authors, not maybe not mistakes, but like common threads that you see like with new authors, what they do when they submit their pieces for edits, like something that you see a lot as a freelance editor that they could like work on or fix before they submit?
One thing I've noticed quite a bit, and I have done this in my own writing, is that it might take an author 20 or 30 pages to get to where the actual beginning should be. Um, and it's taken me, I mean, in my most recent novel, I ended up cutting like the first 30 pages and I realized that I didn't really miss them and you pretty much got all the information you needed to know. So yeah, I think that is a common thing that I see people putting a lot of exposition in at the beginning as opposed to just like starting off with, you know, conflict.
Definitely. Um, so, Sara Crawford, you mentioned that you're still querying. Do you have any advice for authors who might be in the waiting game, also like waiting to hear back from queries, either from agents or from publishers?
Um, I would say start writing the next thing as soon as you can. That was one big mistake that I made. Like I felt kind of blocked right after I signed with my agent, and then we were going on submission to all these different publishers, and I felt kind of, I don't know, I guess after a few months of that, I felt really just blocked. I just felt like I couldn't write anything. So it took me a while to start working on my next book, but there's always going to be a lot of waiting, no matter what part of publishing you are in, whether it's finding an agent or getting a publisher or even waiting on notes from your editor, whatever it is. So if you can be working on that next project to keep your mind off of the actual waiting, I think that will help you stay sane.
Definitely, definitely. Lindsay, I have a question for you about sort of the marketing that you've had to do with your books. I know, like, you probably had to do a lot of it on your own. So can you talk to me a little bit about what that process has been like?
Absolutely. So I think that's something more things I didn't realize going into it. A lot of people think that once you publish the book, you've signed the contract, the hard work is done. And what I've found out in this past year is absolutely not. I think that once your book is in your hand, that's when the hard work begins. Because I think as a new author, it's so hard to get your name out there and to get people interested without seeming like you're just shouting about your book every 5 seconds or tweeting about it every second. So it's a really, really difficult thing to kind of master, and I'll be honest, I haven't mastered it yet. I'm still kind of figuring things out. So, using social media, using contests and giveaways effectively, figuring out really how to go about it. I think the biggest thing for me was, like Sara said earlier, really just building genuine relationships with people and not just worrying about the numbers all of the time. Really worrying more about, how you're impacting people. Are you reaching people in a genuine nature? Because I think that's what really matters at the end of the day. So I think in the past year I've learned not to focus so much on numbers, whether it be sales or how many Twitter followers I have, but really working on building a genuine platform that I can continue to grow over the years. So it is tough, and it is tough figuring it out. So I don't think there is a clear-cut answer to it, which makes it tough too. But I think just constantly evolving and learning. I'm constantly, researching about marketing and book marketing, looking for new ideas, and I think it's just kind of, doing that as you go.
Definitely. I have a question now for all three of you. You all have outside lives from writing and the internet. So how do you make time to write and make sure that you're getting in all of your words that you need in a day?
Well, for me, it's, I know a lot of authors are awesome and they have their very specific routine and like a set place that they write and the time of day. Um, Me being a mom of two little ones and homeschooling, I pretty much just, my laptop goes with me wherever I go. And if I can get a minute, if I have my oldest doing her reading and my youngest is watching Barney, I can get in a little bit, and it's not so much for me about, I've stopped looking at the word count because the word count just makes me crazy. It just makes me totally nuts. I just kind of have an idea of where I want to get for that day, and especially with edits, it's a little bit easier because I already know what's there and know what needs to be looked at and taken care of, and so I can say, okay, I want to edit 5 chapters today. But with writing the first draft, that's definitely much harder. And then for me, I don't sleep a whole lot at this phase in my life. I stay up when I'm deep into needing something on a deadline. I stay up probably till midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning every single night. So yeah, that's what coffee is for. So that's not very helpful to anybody, but that's my kind of my process.
Yeah, I agree about it, like not focusing on the word count. I mean, I know that works for a lot of people, but for me, it works a lot better to have more like general goals, like I'm gonna work on this chapter today, or I'm gonna get to this plot point in the story, something like that. But I used to kind of just be very random about my writing. Like I might go a few days without writing, and then I'll sit there and write for like 5 hours. So lately, I've been trying to make it more regular. So I've been getting up like 2 hours early and writing before I have to do my day job work. And I work from home, so that's kind of nice. So yeah, I save some commuting time that way. But yeah, I think it's just important to find what works for you. Because some people it works really well to write every day, and then some people, it doesn't. So I would say don't feel like you have to fit in, someone else's writer box.
For me as a teacher, I'm off summers, so that's when I do the bulk of my writing. Usually over the summer months, I try to get a first draft of a novel finished of some sort. So in the summer months, I try to set a goal of like a chapter a day for myself usually. And then also like during our like winter break, I'll try to write a little bit more. I've found though since my first book got published, I've been more inspired to write every day. So now even during the school year, I find myself trying to make time throughout the week. I don't commit to every single day, especially during the school year, but maybe a couple of nights a week I'll take an hour or two just to work on something, just to add a little bit to it. And then, like I said, I do the bulk of my writing over the summer. So I think Sarah's right. I think it's just finding what works for you, finding when you have the time. And I think if you try to give yourself too strict of almost like a deadline, it can sometimes cramp your creativity a little bit. I think it's better to just kind of, take a break if you need to, take a breath from it if you need to, but just really figure out what works best for you.
Awesome. And do you all outline, or do you just pants it and everything just kind of comes to you as you're writing?
I'll jump in. I used to always say that I was a pantser because I hated outlining and I could never get through an outline. And every time I tried to outline, I couldn't get past 10,000 words. And then the first time I did an outline was when I finally finished the first draft of my novel, which is releasing this year. But after going through this round of revisions and kind of having to create a new outline for the revisions for myself, I have found that I'm going to be a little bit of both now, because it wasn't, I didn't rewrite the whole book, but it felt like I did, and I feel like if I had outlined a little bit more, not crazy, my outlines, my poor editor, the outline I sent her, it's really doesn't make it. It's just bullet points of paragraphs of my brain is all that my outlines are. It's not the wonderful outlines we were taught by our English teachers in high school and college. I have to take notes for sure, but I found now that I'm definitely going to be doing a little bit more outlining, just because I don't want that many revisions, hopefully, for the second book.
Yeah, I'm kind of a mix of both. I usually start out as a pantser, and once I reach around like the 100-page mark, I either just scratch it all and start over, or then I make an outline. So I kind of outline as I'm going. Like I might outline the next 5 chapters, or have a vague idea of certain plot points that I want to get to, but then my outlines are constantly changing, so I don't know. I think I'm a pantser who wants to be a plotter sometimes, but isn't very good at it.
I think I start out with pretty much just a list of major events I know that I want to happen and in what order they'll happen. And then I just kind of go for it. I start writing. I see where it takes me. Once I get probably a quarter of the way through, then I'll sit down and outline each chapter, not in a very detailed format, just kind of what the major event of each chapter is going to be. But then again, like I will change it too as I go. Like sometimes I'll find that a certain event I had happening I don't like anymore when I get there, so I do change it as I go. But it's a very basic outline. I'm not into the really specific outlining. So that's kind of the process I've been taking.
Definitely. And did you all want to be writers growing up, or is this something that you found like later in life that you wanted to do? Tegan?
Oh! Hey, I'm so sorry to be lame and late.
No, it's no problem. Totally understandable. Why don't we just take a pause and let Tegan kind of introduce herself and talk about her lovely book for a bit?
Sure. So my debut novel came out in November. I just happen to have a copy.
It's so beautiful. I love the cover.
The cover is beautiful.
That is a cool cover.
Thank you, guys. So it was totally a labor of love, both working on the cover with my lifelong best friend, who's a graphic designer. She and I together came up with the concept, though the fabulous Matt Phillips, the cover lure, executed it for us. So that was a labor of love, but the content also was a labor of love. It's about a royal couple, their love story, falling in love, and then their struggle with infertility, which my husband and I struggled with as well. So I wrote this book hoping many people would find it to just be an entertaining read, but also that it would be a vehicle for raising awareness about infertility and adoption.
Awesome. And I love Inconceivable, so if anyone out there watching hasn't read it yet, they should definitely read it. And don't you donate the proceeds to infertility research, or part of the proceeds?
I do donate half of my royalties to Baby Quest Foundation, which provides grants to people in the United States who need assistance paying for fertility treatments. There are only a handful of states that require insurance companies to cover these very expensive treatments. And my husband and I had to take out a loan when we did ours because we did not have insurance coverage. So I know firsthand how difficult and painful it is to go through that. So I'm happy that I can do a small part in helping others afford the treatments that they need.
Definitely, that's amazing. Tegan, we were talking earlier a bit about Twitter pitch competitions, and I mentioned that you found your publisher through a Twitter pitch competition. So could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Actually, I had done several Twitter pitch competitions that led up to Pitchmas, which was the one where I found my publisher. And through the earlier ones, I connected with agents who requested pages. And though ultimately they all declined to represent me, several provided really valuable feedback. And I'm forever grateful that I was able to connect with them and get the feedback that helped me tweak my manuscript so that it was in fine shape to share with Curiosity Quills. During Pitchmas, I received requests from agents and CQ as a publisher. So I went ahead and now pages to everybody who requested them. And Curiosity Quills came back rather quickly and asked for the full manuscript and then made an offer. And it just became apparent that they had a really great vision for my book and for how to market it. So it was hard to say no when I had an offer in hand.
That's amazing. We were just about to answer my question if everyone knew they wanted to be a writer growing up, or if it was something they discovered later in life that they were passionate about, and anyone can answer this one. It's up for grabs.
I will jump in because I have known I wanted to be a writer ever since I learned how, pretty much. I used to write these little plays and make my neighbors perform them on the driveway when I was a kid. So, and they were like Disney fan fiction plays, pretty much. But yeah, I've been writing ever since I could, really.
I'm the same way as Sara Crawford. My mom always she loved to read, and so she instilled the love for reading in me, and that kind of just led to loving to write and make up stories and poems, and I just love English. I hate math, and so English was where I found just kind of my haven. All of my favorite teachers growing up were always my English and literature teachers. It just kind of worked out that way. But I didn't really get serious about pursuing writing because, as we know, it is very, not only difficult to get your book out there and get published and get an agent or whatever way you take, then there's the rejection and the reviews, stuff that I haven't experienced yet, but I've experienced rejection from critique partners and things like that, but readers can be brutal, and so putting yourself out there as a writer is kind of a huge deal, and I didn't really get serious about it until a few years ago when my mom died, and I just kind of felt that push. I knew she wanted me to finish my book. She had been urging me to do it for a while, and so after that I got really serious about it, and that's when I started doing a lot of the research that it takes to get into the publishing world.
Has everybody talked but me? Did I miss Lindsay?
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead, Lindsay.
Okay, I'll go ahead. Basically, it's kind of the same story. When I was growing up, I loved writing all of the time. I still have some of my journals from when I was little. I would write stories and poems. I was a total bookworm, loved reading. And it was always like my biggest dream to publish a book. But to be honest, I never really thought it would happen. It felt like one of those kind of pipe dreams that you know, some girls want to be princesses, some people want to be rock stars. I wanted to publish a book. I felt like it wouldn't happen. In college then, I had a professor who was really inspiring. The class was called The Literature of Health and Healing, and we talked a lot about how you never know how long you have to achieve your dreams. And literally, I went home from his class that night and started writing what would become Voice of Innocence. Still didn't think it would ever go anywhere. I actually didn't even tell anyone I was writing it, not even my family. It was like my big, deep secret that I was writing the book. And then it was years and years later that my husband actually encouraged me to, to try and get it published. He kind of told me, what do you have to lose? You might as well go for it. So when I got that first contract, it was really like the biggest dream come true. It was something I never expected. So it's been a really, really crazy journey and really exciting.
So I also started writing when I was young. I used to write poetry and plays, short stories, And I sort of filtered that writing energy into journalism, which seemed like a good way to make a living and still be able to write. So I did that for many years, and that was a lot of fun. And I covered a lot of stories that would stretch the believability of fiction readers. So I thought it would not be too much of a stretch for me then to, when I had a transition in life that led to me staying at home for a year with my young kiddos, I thought, you know, I finally have the mental space. I'm not concentrating on real life events and all the things that are happening from a journalist perspective. I want to try to write a novel. And so I had the mental space to do it. I did a little bit each night after the kids were asleep. It was huge. I had a steep learning curve because I tend to write still like a journalist. I whip through the scenes pretty quickly. I don't give a lot of flourish and detail, but with the loving help of critique partners, I've worked on that. So I think I always knew I wanted to be a writer in some form. And I still do. I write for my day job. I'm just doing marketing communications now, and I do other freelance writing projects too.
Awesome. Tegan has talked about being a journalist, and Hattie in Inconceivable is a journalist. Do any of you see yourself in the characters that you write, either in the job that they have or any like personality traits?
I would have to say absolutely, for sure. I don't think, for me, I can't write anything without putting some of my personality in there, and my thing is pop culture references, and my editor has to kind of tone them down because she's like, you have way too many pop culture references in there. And I think especially with my main character for my debut, Unblemished, she struggles a lot with self-image and believing that she is beautiful, and that's something I always struggled with as a teenager, especially having acne. And it was, you know, it deals a little bit with bullying, but mostly just kind of accepting yourself and loving yourself, and that is something that it's taken me a long time, even past high school years, to be able to accept myself. So I think that's definitely in there. And then my main character's mom she's like my mom. She's totally my mom. I can't help it. I had to write my mom in there. So I think for me, I can't help but kind of be inspired by the people around me, and then by my own life experiences when I'm writing my characters.
Yeah, for me, you know, music is such a part of my life, and I kind of see everything through music in a way. So I feel like that's one theme that's always in pretty much everything I write. All of the characters I write are either musicians or they love music, and you know, at one point I kind of felt like I should try not to do that and try to write some characters that weren't obsessed with music, but I just kind of, I don't know, it felt like it was kind of flat. So yeah, I guess I've just kind of accepted that I'm the girl who's going to write about music, so and that's okay. You know, because we all have themes that we kind of repeat in our writing. So yeah, that's one thing that comes up for me a lot.
Well, for me, I already said that I put my Mastiff Henry in every single book, and that's just because I'm obsessed with him. I started that with Voice of Innocence, and it's just kind of carried through. And I also definitely write from my own life experience, especially my first book, Voice of Innocence. I really didn't know, you know, what I was doing, so I really did write basically what I knew. A lot of my readers who know me personally were like, wow, I had a really hard time like separating you from your character of Emma, because there is so much of me in my main character Emma, and Corbin is loosely based off of my husband. Emma and Corbin both meet at the art table when they're when they're very young in the book, and my husband and I met when we were 12 years old at the art table. So there are a lot of similarities in our relationship. Kind of the funny thing is, though, the people that see the connections, they stop me and they're like, wait a second, did your husband go to prison for something? Because they kind of wonder if that's based on reality, too. My husband did not go to prison. That part is completely fictionalized, but a lot of the characteristics are based on who we are and our own lives. I think as I go forward, I've been kind of getting away from that a little bit and kind of stretching myself as a writer, writing about more diverse characters who are different from me. So in my second book, Violet is the complete opposite of my personality. She's really kind of zany, kind of go with the flow kind of girl, which is not who I typically am. So I think as I'm going, I'm kind of getting out of that comfort zone a little bit, which is good, but there's still definitely nuances of our lives all throughout my books.
So let me say you're correct, Maggie, that Hattie is a journalist and that a lot of the infertility aspects of Inconceivable reflect the experiences I had, though not exactly line for line. But the great thing about fiction is you can, exaggerate things and play things up for dramatic effect, and I certainly did that in Inconceivable. I'm a pretty even-keeled person, and Hattie is plain spoken. She kind of says the things maybe a lot of us think but don't say out loud. Or you have the privilege of reading what she's thinking because you're hearing her inner monologue. So Hattie is flavored by some of the experiences I had, but she is definitely not me, and not all of her experiences are all of mine. So I really enjoyed the freedom that comes with writing fiction, because if this were a memoir, I would be much more entirely bound by my own experiences. So I really loved getting to explore the space, so to speak, and learn who Hattie was and this other voice that was somewhat different for me. And for dramatic effect, it made a lot of sense that infertility takes you down about 5 pegs or more. So for dramatic effect, I wanted her to be a little over the top in the beginning so that we see that evolution of her character, because I'm a huge fan of seeing characters change and evolve as they experience things as we do in real life. So that was something that I really intentionally did. So Hattie is flavored by me, but definitely not me.
Great. I have a purely selfish question because I want to add more great books to my to-read list, but if you had to pick one book that was published in, it could be 2015 to like this early 2016, what has been your favorite book that's been published in this year plus a month? I know it's a tough one.
I'm going to say The Walls Around Us by Nova Rensuma, which I have around here somewhere, but that book kept me up. I mean, I read it in one sitting pretty much, and it's described as orange is the new black meets Black Swan. So if you like either of those things, it's young adult also. But yeah, Nova Rensuma is just a really amazing writer.
I'll have to check that out. That sounds right up my alley.
That's a really hard question because I generally tend to read books like years after they've been published because I'm a horrible booktuber and I'm so behind. So I'm kind of like looking at my pile of 2015 books over here. But honestly, I'm going to have to go with, I just read The Siren this last month, and as much as the few books that were published last year that I read out of all the books that I read, I loved The Siren by Kara Cass. It was just such a sweet story, and after just kind of being in a reading slump, I think because that one's still fresh on my mind, if you would ask me a year ago, I would have said 1,000 Pieces of You because I had just read that. But I just really loved The Siren, and I read it in 2 days. It was a sweet read, a cute romance about true love and going to whatever length you have or taking whatever risk you can for true love. And I absolutely am such a cheese ball, and I love books like that. So
that one's on my list already. I need to read it like yesterday. So
I read At the Water's Edge. That was probably my favorite summer read. I absolutely loved it because it was so different. It had such a different setting and different feel to it, but it still had all of the things that I really love about her writing. So I really liked At the Water's Edge. That would probably be my pick.
So I got an advanced copy of Esther Dalceno's forthcoming novel, Gabriel and the Swallows, and it's one of the earliest, maybe the first publication from Benjamin of Tone's publishing company. Am I saying that right? I'm doing this from memory.
Yes.
Okay, so Esther, I was already a fan of hers because I read Drown, her debut novel last year, and really loved it, and that's a grown-up retelling of the Little Mermaid story. The Gabriel and the Swallows, it's just beautiful beyond words. It's set in a little town in Italy in the 50s or 60s. It has elements of magical realism. I really like books that send me away with, I don't know, some kind of, even if it's small, some kind of life lesson or something, little nugget I can take and use and make my life better. And I just came away from that book realizing there are so many magical things in my own life that I fail to see daily. And Esther told that sort of moral in a beautiful way in her book. So, but I'm kind of like the others who said, you know, my favorite book's the one I just read. So it's hard to say and it's hard to pick. And also, like Sara, I tend to be pretty behind. So I'm either reading something that's not yet out or something that came out a long time ago.
I need to read a lot of books that Ben has published through Of Tones. He's doing an incredible job, which is exciting for YouTube. But yeah, I have Gabriel and the Swallows also on my TBR, so I will like add it like higher up on the list now that you've recommended it so highly.
I think you'll like it. I think you'll like it a lot.
Good, good. That's exciting. I just realized that I never asked everyone to say like where they are at in the country right now, because I think it's kind of cool that we're all over. So I'm in Iowa City, Iowa right now, like right in the middle of it.
I'm smack dab in the middle of Utah, in the middle of nowhere.
I'm in Atlanta, so am I the only East Coast person?
No, I'm from Pennsylvania. Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
I'm in the southern Appalachian Mountains.
Very cool. It's almost 9:30, if you can believe it or not, so we've almost been talking for an hour now, and I just want to take these last couple of minutes if everyone wants to kind of go or have books out where people can find the books. If you have a YouTube channel or website that you want people to check out, now's your time to talk about it.
I'll go first. My debut novel, YA Urban Fantasy Romance Unblemished, comes out on October 11th. It is on Goodreads. If you just look up Unblemished, it's one of the first ones that comes up. It's by Sara Ella. The cover is not on there yet. The cover reveal is coming in March, which I'm super excited about. And I'll be doing kind of a fun event for the cover reveal that I'll be announcing soon. And then my YouTube channel, if you just look up Sara Ella, my YouTube channel is just like Sara Crawford said, I'm just Sara Ella on there. It's real creative. And yeah, I have a website at saraella.com, but mostly you can find me on YouTube or on Twitter at Sara Ella Writes.
I also have a YouTube channel, and it's just Sara Crawford. My book's not out yet, so I don't have any information there, but I am on Twitter at Sara_Crawford, and you could find me at saracrawford.net.
I'm Lindsay Detwiler, and my third novel, Then Comes Love, which is a women's fiction novel, is coming out March 25th of this year with Hot Tree Publishing. It is on Goodreads right now. My cover's not released yet either, so it will be coming the end of this month. And then I also have a website that I'm on where I tend to blog about books I love. I blog about makeup. I blog about Henry some more. It's just lindsaydetwiler.com. And then I'm also on Twitter at Lindsay Detwiler.
So just because I like visual aids, there's my book cover again. And you can order this beautiful paperback version if you'd like, or the ebook from Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, Book Depository if you're overseas. You can add it on Goodreads, and I have a website, TeganWren.com, and I write about reading, writing, adoption, infertility, travel, and food. Because, like, what more do you need in life, right? And then I'm on Twitter at Tegan Wren Writes. And as probably the oldest person on this call, I don't really have an active YouTube channel because I have 3 small children.
That's okay. Well, thank you all so much for spending this hour with me. I've had so much fun getting to know you better and getting to know your writing process. And this will live on YouTube after this broadcast finished, so if you want to share it anywhere, you totally can. And yeah, just big thank you, especially to people who tuned in and watched. There's like a rolling number of people who were coming in and out, so thank you for watching if you made it to the end also.
Thank you, Maggie, for having me.
I'm Maggie, my channel is Magazanne.
Yeah, thanks for setting this up and getting us all together.
Mm-hmm. It was awesome.
Problem.
Thank you.
All right. Goodbye.